All right, PGA Nation, we are back. We are back with a fun, exciting week. It's March Madness. Bring on the brackets. That's what we got in golf. Dell Technologies match play tournament. It's going to be a lot of fun this week. It's a little different. My bracket was busted about an hour and a half into the tournament, so I'm glad I get a second chance with the golf tournament this week. We're in Austin, Texas, a fun course. If you remember from last year, it's a really nice course. It was kind of nice and fun to watch on TV. It should provide some excitement this week, but this is definitely a different week. I mean, match play is just significantly different than stroke play. How points are going to be earned, your strategy in picking golfers. This is very different. I'm sure you heard or read about the tournament leading up to tonight. You have some insights, but it is going to be very strategic, ensuring that you're giving yourself the possibility of having an optimal lineup, making sure you pick golfers in each of the different regions so that you can possibly have, guys advance as far as they can. But we'll dive into all that as the show goes on. Because of the different format, we are going to do the draft a little bit differently tonight. We're only going to draft 3 teams. Those 3 teams are going to be the good guys, the Win Daily team, CNI. There's going to be the audience, of course, as always, drafting your own team, and the bad guys, of course, the Roto Gang, Spencer, and one of our favorite guests joining us tonight, the first ever DraftCast guest is back again, the model Maniac. Byron, how you doing tonight?
I am doing wonderfully, boys. I cannot tell you how much fun it's going to be being with you guys again. The nerves are at a much more calmed pace this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are. Welcome. And looking forward to a fun episode with you boys.
I hope you're not underestimating us, because you should be nervous by the draft talent you're going up against this evening.
Oh no! Now that with Spence on my side, I'm like Gronk right now. I'm just running, and I'll just catch it wherever it gets thrown. So it's all good.
Fair enough. Well, pleasure having you on tonight. Sia, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I was a little discouraged because we got this match play event, and I'm on quite the streak when it comes to first round leaders and outrights. However, and I just tweeted this out, have no fear, because at the end of the show, I'm going to give out a few first round leaders for the Corrales Punta Cana event. So, which of course starts on Thursday. And just a reminder for everybody that's watching this event, the bracket event, it starts tomorrow. So if you're doing your DraftKings teams, or if you're doing a contest on PGA Tour or Rick Gaiman's contest, rickrungood.com, and I reference him because we're going to be referencing his bracket to kind of show you the groups and whatnot. If you're going to do those contests, do them tonight. Do them maybe while you're watching this show. Either way, make sure you get everything done tonight, and that's kind of why we're here. And by the way, Joel, I'm happy to announce that the team I drafted last week was really good. If it wasn't for Martin Laird, I honestly think that had some outright potential. I'm trying to remember exactly what I had. Of course, Sam Burns, I had Woodland, I had Fitzpatrick, Mito, and one other guy I'm forgetting. But unfortunately,
Hadwin,
because
maybe?
It might have been, it was Hadwin, I think. But unfortunately, somebody drafted Svensson, and so I drafted Laird. And I liked Laird, but I was dumb enough not to have a second team that had Svensson in it instead of Laird. And if that was in there, it would have been an amazing weekend. But I'm looking forward to this match play. I think it's super interesting. And I'm looking forward to taking down Rotoballer because, I just think it's fun to do that. And, truth is, there were other Rotoballer PGA guys we could have brought on. But we thought it was so unfair to be going up against the FSWA Golf Writer of the Year that we had to kind of like dumb it down a little bit and bring Byron on. So that's really the explanation as to why, Byron, we brought you back. Like, sorry to say, we didn't want to bring the big Joes on because they might have crushed us.
That's okay. Like I said, every Gronk needs his Tom, and I'm gladly willing to fulfill that role today. So.
I'm just kidding, of course.
Speaking of GOATs, and GOATs meaning Golf Writers of the Year and things of that nature, Spence, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Joel. I walk a fine line here between Rotoballer and Win Daily. I am part baller, but I also win daily, so there's probably a reason those two things go together for me.
I see what you did there. That was pretty good. I like that. So before we dive in, I'm going to go ahead and toot my own horn a little bit. I crushed it last week, of course. In the showdown realm, I was at the very end sweating taking down the whole round 4 showdown tournament. Had Riley won, I would have finished in second. I ended up finishing in third for a smooth 10K. I'll take it. But, we're going after we have brighter stars to shoot for this week. So that's in the rearview mirror. We're moving on to the Match Play Championship. We're going to have a really fun draft tonight. So what we're going to do to explain is Sia won last week, so Sia picked the order. Sia and I and the Win Daily team, the good guys, are picking first. The audience, you're going to have the second pick, and then the bad guys will pick third. There's going to be snake format. We will be discussing our picks. So, Sia and I are a team. We don't have a draft like big board already, so we're going to be talking through this as we go. Mm-hmm. So you're probably going to want to steal our picks, as we talk through, guys. I get it. But also we want to talk through the strategy because, you do want to be very strategic in terms of who you go after in each region because you need to ensure you give yourself the possibility to have the entire Final Four. So we're going to be picking to ensure we're building optimal lineups. So we'll talk through each of the regions, who we're targeting that region, and why.
Yeah, and Joel, that's a really important reason as to why you might want to have a bracket in front of you. And for those of you that don't have one and you need to reference one, you can just go to my Twitter. You can really just type in probably Dell Technologies Bracket Challenge, or again, go to Rick's site or just Google it, whatever. But I actually posted a bracket that you can just literally click on and enlarge on my Twitter like 2 comments ago, which was this afternoon. If you click on that, you'll see all of the groups. And what's really important, Joel stressed it, to have the 4 Final Four people, or at least the possibility to have them in there. But just as important, you want to have 6 of the 8 quarterfinal guys, at least you want to have the possibility that 6 of the 8 are going to be there. So when you're looking at the bracket, what you need to be focused on is the quarterfinals and making sure that you're picking so that 6 of the 8 guys that make the quarterfinals are in your lineup. Now, what's the likelihood that all 6 are going to be there? Extremely remote. But the idea is if you want an outright, you want to give yourself the best possibility you can, and that's why you want to have you want to make sure you don't take guys in the same group or in adjacent groups, because if you do, they're going to knock each other out well before those quarterfinals, the great 8, if you will.
For sure. And this is like a concept. It took me a day to fully make sure I understood it. If you're confused, don't play this week because you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. You really need to understand there is an edge. If you understand it, you are building optimal, at least potential lineups. You're going to give yourself a chance, and it could be fun. But make sure you know what you're doing before you enter lineups this week, so you give yourself a real chance of actually cashing. So
and Joel, there's a backup tournament. So if for some reason you're just not interested in this, I'd encourage you, if you normally play DFS, maybe throw a lineup or two. Just make sure you have the bracket in front of you, like while you're watching this show, perhaps. But Corrales Punta Cana, listen, DraftKings has offerings that maybe FanDuel does too for that event. They're not, there's not as many as normal, but there's plenty out there that you can have fun with and have a normal DraftKings week if you're just not into the match play. I will say this, from a betting standpoint, you definitely want to be listening to the Better Golf Pod because I'm guessing, I think they just recorded a very long show. That's, of course, Spencer and Nick Brentwish. Again, Better Golf Pod. They probably went through a ton of the head-to-head matchups, the group matchups, the odds, things of that nature. So while we like to give you some of that as well on this show, I know Better Golf Pod did a really good job of thoroughly going through that. There is a big advantage potentially this week in the matchup department specifically. So definitely look out for the Better Golf Pod.
Yeah, I had on the boys from Draws and Fades. That's Matt Miller and Owen Vrabel this week. They filled in for Nick. We filled out brackets. We went through the entire tournament from start to finish. I think you'll get a very good idea who all of us like this week. It's easily equated into betting viewpoints from that. But I think it's a very good podcast. It's a very long podcast. It's about an hour and a half, but we thoroughly deep dived everything.
Awesome.
I love it. And I will say, I took a quick peek at the tournament in Punta Cana. It's a JV field, but it's really not as weak as you would think, considering it's a whole other tournament this week. If you want to get into it, there's some edges. There's plenty of familiar names that we see in these tournaments. So you can have some fun with that field as well. Mm-hmm. Now, before we get into the draft tonight, even though it's a different type of tournament, we're still doing the course breakdown. It's the best one in the biz. Spence, talk to us. What are you looking for in Austin this week?
So I'm going to bypass my full statistical breakdown of this. I just think it's too complicated to fully talk about this. The one thing I will say is that there's a lot of different routes that we can go this week. And one of the things I notice when building a model, it's an interesting tournament because normally I try to build a model that I look at everybody against the field. here you know exactly who everybody's playing in every single match that they have. So you can look at them specifically against a player to try to get a better viewpoint. So, when I ran a model this week, there's a lot of guys that might be lower or higher on my model than they ended up grading out against the players that they played against. If you get an opportunity, definitely try to make a copy of my model. All of it's laid out very cleanly so you can see it. But as far as like the stats I put into it, I looked at par 3, 4, and 5 scoring from the playing yardages for the field. I did a weighted GIR that incorporated some match play viewpoints. There's a ton of putting and approach play in different areas. The weighted strokes gained total category incorporated some of that into the mix a second time to go along with off the tee and around the green. And then I did look at a combination of birdie percentage and bogey avoidance together. I would say the easiest way to summarize that is I'm trying to find a course specific fit for all these players and then compare them against each other. Someone with a large edge in a certain area will be more likely to win their matchup. And then I went through for every group and awarded points for all players against each other to see where upsets might be more likely to take place. There's really no 100% answer to give of how to do it this week. I think that there's going to have to be some gut and feel. Last year, there's only one of the top seeds, I believe, that advanced. So these boards can get very wonky quickly on it. Just trust your gut, run numbers. I do think that running numbers are more important than most of the industry will say. I don't think that that's a shock to anybody listening that I'm data on everything that I'm going to do here this week. But try to look at players against each other. And then, on the Better Golf Pod, you'll get a better idea of why I like certain players to advance the way that I did. But I'm sure we'll be talking about at least a lot of those guys this week for this draft too.
I love it. That is super helpful. We appreciate it. I think we can go ahead and get right into the draft. I'm going to pull up the board. All right, it's only 3 teams. Win Daily is going to be Sia and I. We are picking first. Sia, since you won the tournament and gave us the honors, I will let you lead off. I'm also going to share the bracket so you can see, strategically, these are the regions, that you want to have someone from each region. Sia, where do we want to look first?
So
good luck, by the way. Good luck.
Well,
no, we're not saying that.
You're gonna need a lot of good luck. Roto, bola.
So Joel, here's the thing. There's a guy, and you guys are going to be surprised by this format. Like, we're literally going to talk this pick out. And so, Joel, I want to start with a guy, and I'm just going to give you my rationale real quick first. I want to take the path of least resistance. I don't think that's like a super heady play. I think that's what everybody is kind of looking at. Like, who can get out of not just their group, but maybe get to the Elite 8 in maybe the easiest fashion. And for me, it's not an elite player, or I think people think of him as an elite player, but it's not one of those guys. It's not like your top 3 or 4 players in the world. It's the guy right under that, the level right under that. And I look at his group and I know he's the best golfer in that group. That doesn't mean I know he's getting out of it. I just know he's the best golfer and it's not even close. And then I look at who he might play in the next round, and I'm not like, it's going to be a pretty good golfer, but then I look at who we might play in that next round and I'm like, I'm not super intimidated. And so, Joel, I want you to look in, and I think this is.
I already know who it is.
Well, okay, before you guess.
I've written down a name also on the draft. I don't know if I'm right, but I have a guess also.
So we're looking at Rick Gaiman's chart on rickrungood.com. Again, there's a lot of contests to enter. I know Rick's giving out a lot of free stuff, so including membership. So definitely go to rickrungood.com and enter his contest. But I want to make sure I'm looking at the right region. Okay, so it's the upper right region, which of course is shaded blue. And so you guys know, right? Go ahead and everybody, you can say it out loud. Xander. Is Spencer, is that where you were going?
Yeah, that's who I wrote down.
Okay. So, Joel, and this part of the reason I actually wanted the first pick, because, I think there's another player that I could argue, but do you have anything against that pick? Were you thinking about going somewhere else? You feel real strong about it? Because if not, let's just lock him up.
I align with your strategy there. Like, I don't think he's the number one guy I would take to win this tournament, but I think you're right. I think his path to success seems the most open, meaning, at least getting to the Elite 8, he's going to have to face somebody tough in the group when it's at 10 above him. But, he should definitely win his group. He'll have a tough matchup there. But I think it does have a nice draw.
Right. Because once he gets to the Elite Eight, it's either Colin Morikawa, who frankly, I'm not sure I expect him to get to the Elite Eight, but even if he does, I think it's a fair fight. And most likely it's one of the other 7, just from a probability standpoint, it's one of the other 7 guys, which Xander would definitely have the edge on. So yeah, let's lock in Xander. And I guess we got to investigate. Let me take a look at his price, but what was
9,600.
it? 9,600. Right. So that's us. So now we are moving to the audience. Now, I'm hoping that some of the people in the audience actually are looking at a bracket, because this is sort of where this format can frustrate the audience and the audience picks. So if you have some nominations, we already have one in there. Go ahead and put them down. And you should probably be thinking of these nominations as Joel and I, or I should say as Rotoballer or Win Daily are giving their picks out, because it's going to be bouncing back to you guys pretty much constantly since you're in the middle. So we have a couple of, okay, so there it is. We have the pick. Do you want to, who wants to, Joel, go ahead.
So you guys got Scotty Scheffler. And I will say, I'll be honest, even though I'm fully on board and I align with our pick, I would have taken Scheffler with our first pick as my first pick. So I think
it's not Scotty Scheffler.
No?
No.
Oh, it's JT.
JT. Courtney Harden and Carmen both said JT back to back. So the audience takes JT. Interestingly enough, and Byron, I'll let you jump in here too. I mean, it's your pick in a sec, but I'm curious what your opinion is, because if I wasn't going to pick Xander, I was going to pick JT. So I mean, I obviously love that pick. Byron, what are your thoughts on Xander and JT?
I love Xander. I obviously think that, it seems like it's too much of a layup for him to just don't botch the layup. But, you've got an open court ahead if you don't trip on your shoelaces, like Gronk. But I love the Xander pick. And then JT, I don't know, he's in a group with Kisner. And I just think Kisner is he's scrappy. He's a, match play guy. So that's kind of the thing I'm not necessarily too driven to JT by. And just his putting, it's just, I don't know. There's not a lot of certainty involved in that aspect of his game. But you guys, the audience took him, so it's not my problem anymore. Or our problem anymore, Spencer.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I will add to that, I will leave out one of the names just not to influence it. But when we're looking at the opening group stage here, Xander is the second most likely in my model to advance out of his group. It's hard to really say anything negative about him. The only thing that I will say is that it wouldn't shock me if he ended up slipping up in a situation that nobody saw coming. I don't think it's necessarily going to be in that initial group stage portion. You never know, but there are guys that I like above him that I think could take him out. And then as far as Justin Thomas is concerned, I don't have him advancing personally out of his group. I think somebody else is going to get out of that group. So not that it's a bad pick. I just think that when you have to make putts for 3 matches to get through, you would have to think you have very difficult matchups. I don't think any of those are layups. I think Mark Leishman is tough. I think Kevin Kisner is tough. I think Luke List is more difficult than you would think. Even if List gets hot with the putter, that all of a sudden changes the trajectory of that group. But it's hard to hate the pick. I just don't love the ownership for how volatile this tournament is, and probably for how volatile that group is. I would rather go with one of the long shots there.
Fair enough. All right. So where are we at now? So are we on Team Rotoballer now?
It's Team Rotoballer's turn. I will propose a person to my wonderful partner, Spencer, as if it's like a vow of sorts. This individual has had himself 4 straight top 20s in the last few events he's played in. He was on the nasty side of the players' weather and still finished inside the top 20. His last 20 rounds, he's top 10 on tour in approach. He's got his approach game dialed in. One of his wins he has on tour is in a playoff. So he knows how to compete when it matters. He is a proven winner multiple times. He's won once this year. Any ideas we'll be going with here, Spence?
I think I have a guess if I will say it after, but if Sia and Joel would like to take a guess first.
Joel, you go ahead. I wasn't fully dialed in.
I don't know.
I would assume that Byron is talking about Max Homa.
Indeed, we are speaking of Max Homa.
I do love that pick.
He's in DJ's group. DJ's been splotchy, good golf lately. Some great rounds, some bad rounds. Max's game, currently much higher floor, I think, which is preferred in match play. You can get away with a bad round here and there with a W still, where DJ might have a really great round and then just blow it in the next day. So if we were to pick in the group itself, that's kind of the determining factor there with Max.
Yeah, right. I will add to that a little bit. So when we look at groups 1, 16, 9, and 8, I ran a model that said it, but my model seems to think that is the weakest quadrant of the group there. And I know you have names like Rahm and Koepka and DeChambeau and Dustin Johnson, and you would think that all of a sudden you have all these heavyweights, which you do on those, I guess, 2. DeChambeau has a little bit more volatility to him. But the one thing that happens is if Rahm doesn't make it out, or if Koepka doesn't make it out, that region really opens up quickly. I don't have Max Homa advancing from this group. I have somebody else, but I think the thought process that Byron has makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that I want to make sure, since we're combining picks together, is that anybody that we take, we both either end up liking the play, or it's like the second play that we would like. And for me, I think the most likely person to get out of the group would be somebody else. I think Homa's the second most likely. And I think that next matchup in the Sweet 16 is a very advantageous one, no matter who they draw there. So if you can get out of the group, you might have an Elite 8 run. And then from there, I mean, really, it's some luck comes into play. So I think Homa makes a lot of sense. I think he's about as likely to win the group as Dustin. First time I ran it through, I did have Homa over Dustin. So I'm fine signing off on the pick of Homa and making him the first play there, mostly with how weak that region is. But I do want to say one thing. This will influence it a little bit, I guess, going forward. Never mind. I will hold that thought. I don't want to say something that says too much into it. But there is a player that I really like in this range that now we're not going to be able to get to. But just keep that in mind at the end. If I remember, I'll try to name the player.
For the record, Max Homa was my one and done pick this week for the first cut. So I'm a pretty big fan. I wasn't going to take an elite player because of the somewhat randomness of this event, but I thought Max Homa's path was pretty strong. So I absolutely love that. Okay, so it's back to the audience, right?
It's to
us. Yeah,
us again.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right.
So I guess I will throw out a name here, and this is my pick to win the tournament. So I'm hoping Byron will sign off on this. But so it comes from Group 13, which is the group of Daniel Berger, Tyrrell Hatton, Siwoo Kim, and Christian Bezuidenhout. This is a really strong group. So when I ran my numbers, this was the most difficult group from top to bottom. This is essentially my group of death that I have. So it's going to be less likely to get out of this group, but I did notice that the player who gets out of here, I think, is going to be more inclined to make a run. I like their next matchup. I think that the region in general down there is probably the second weakest one. I think the left side in general has some issues to it, but I really like Tyrrell Hatton this week. I'd like to hear what model thinks before we go in that direction, but he's my pick to win. So there's a lot I like about him.
I mean, he's coming in here as the best putter over the last 24 rounds. So his putter is just cooking. And we know if he's only going to have to battle the demons within himself and one other person. It's not a full field event. I feel like if he can keep himself in the chill zone, he's going to have great success here. He's fiery. I think he's going to bring a lot of energy to his matchups. I've had a tough time personally associating like statistics and things to guys that are going to do well here. Which is quite something considering me and Spence are both very data driven. But Tyrrell's had, a decent match play career at a 50% clip. He's won his events. So I like him. His putting is fantastic, and that can be a ninja star to anyone's, nasty. So, yeah, I love Tyrrell.
Yeah, Hatton and Berger, I mean, those are two guys for me that are top 6 in this field. So it's very unfortunate that they draw each other here. And even below that, Siwoo Kim, I think he makes some sense. I don't know what Byron thinks about his boy Christian Bezuidenhout this week, but I think it's a tough group from top to bottom with it. So sure, Berger might end up getting through. Sure, Siwoo Kim could end up getting through. But Zayden would probably be my least preferred option of the 4 if you made me power rank them. But I don't know. I think one of the things it does is it gives us a nice little play in the top left. It gives us a play in the bottom left, and it will start opening things up for us a little bit now that we can go a different couple routes with it, depending on what we want to do moving forward.
All right.
And both those guys are winners for us. Max Homer is going to win
Yes.
it all for me. So,
all right, audience, you guys can start nominating guys. For those of you that don't know, the reason why we keep saying Bezuidenhout is Byron's boy, it's not just because they're both from South Africa. It's because they were golf bros growing up. They literally went out and golfed together. That's pretty cool, man.
Yes, I have a vivid memory of me beating him in junior match play. So just when you're watching Bezuidenhout out there beating the world's elite, maybe we'll see, not Tyrrell, but beating the world's elite, just know that your boy, the model maniac Byron, beat him when we were 16 or 14 or whatever it was. Just know that. Please.
I think that's fantastic. That's bulletin board material. We're gonna have to cut that up and tag him and send it to him. But all right, so we have our next guy. It's pretty clear here that Cameron Young, nominated by both Courtney Harden and Midnight Dancer, is going to be the nominee here. Obviously, up and comer. I mean, he's in a tough spot from what I recall. But any opinions on him before we move on to the Win Daily pick?
Love it.
Yeah, I it's a long shot to say, but I think he's going to win the group.
Yeah, that's fair. I also think he's, I know this is a silly thing to say perhaps, but I think he's the type of guy that playing 7 rounds over whatever 5 days is probably not going to phase him relative to some of the players in this field. I think that there's something to be said for that. And obviously he's been knocking it out of the park. I don't mean just off the tee. I mean, everything he's pretty much been striping it. So obviously an up-and-comer in this field. By the way, side note, Joel, I want you to think of our next pick as you look at the board. But Midnight Dancer, if I recall correctly, is the guy who threw a $50 free bet that he got from either FanDuel or DraftKings or Caesars or something on my first-round leader last week on Adam Hadwin, which, of course, he had to pro rata it down. But he also had, of course, my other first-round leader, Jonathan Vegas. So he was able to, get 2 of the 4. But pretty cool to use your $50 free bet on a first round leader who's, I think he was 70-1, and to actually hit it. That's pretty awesome. So I don't recommend anybody put $50 actual dollars on a first round leader bet. I'm saying that off the record, but also on the record.
Too low.
Because it's too low, obviously. But I'm just saying, if you have a free bet, it makes more sense. But anyway, yeah. So, okay, Joel, it is on us. We have back-to-back picks now. So I have a couple people in mind, but I want you to kind of maybe lead off here. Who do you like? And you can even take the next guy too, but we can discuss it. Go ahead.
So I'm going to strap us a little bit, but I just feel too strongly about this pick. We're going to have to go with stars and scrubs. Mm-hmm. I really like Scotty Scheffler.
Okay.
The fact that he's still left here surprises me. And I saw some people mention in the chat, let's not forget, this is basically his home course, right? So this is a course he is very comfortable at. And we're getting a guy who is playing as the top 2 golfer in the world over the last 2 or 3 months, playing at his home course. I just think there's a lot to like about Scotty this week. In terms of his draw, it's mediocre. I think, he's got Fitzpatrick in his group, which is a challenge. But as long as he gets out of his group, Group 12 is, I think, one of the weaker groups that he should easily get out of there and really advance far. So I really like Scotty Scheffler this week.
Yeah, that's fair. I actually like Scotty, and I do have, just so you know, I have a really low end option that I kind of like if you want to just make our sort of salaries workable. I will say this. I do like Matt Fitzpatrick as well. I mean, nobody's hitting it better than Matt Fitzpatrick right now. So, I thought Fitzpatrick was going to be kind of like a game theory-ish play because I thought everybody was going to be on Scotty Scheffler in that group for so many good reasons. But it turns out, and I've looked at Stevens, who was in the chat. I've looked at his ownership article on WinDailySports.com, and honestly, he's not as low as I thought he'd be. I know this is a shortened field, but he's only 4 to 5 percentage points lower than Scotty Scheffler, which actually kind of surprises me. I thought the chasm would be a little bit bigger there. So with that said, I mean, doesn't make me super warm and fuzzy about Fitzpatrick. But I just wanted to point out I do like Fitzpatrick in that group as well, because I think he's hitting it just as well and he's lesser owned. But Scotty, it's a home course thing. He's hitting it so well. He definitely has that sort of, we know he can win here. I guess he was second place last year. So let me take the next guy. And I don't think anybody's going to be like, if you have this guy on your team, you're not going to be like super happy about it. But I do think he provides the necessary salary relief to have a stars and scrubs team. He's in group 14. And honestly, I think he's a good course fit here. He's been hitting it okay lately in terms of like the super recent form. It's okay. But if you scope it out, like maybe 24, 36 rounds, we know this guy has potential. It's Matt McNeely, the guy who got into this field because Sam Burns decided to relax a little bit after his win. He's super cheap and he gives us maybe some flexibility, and he's not anywhere near Xander or Scotty in terms of being in an adjacent group. So he fits the optimal build. So let's go Matt McNeely there. Is that Joel? That's cool?
Yeah, I think, McNeely to me is a high risk, high reward play, right? He could easily knock it out of his group, but he has the potential. He's good enough to get out of the group and make some noise. So, there's a wide range of outcomes, but I do think there's high potential there as well.
All right, so we are back on the audience, and I don't know if I've seen a couple names, but I don't know if that's a name that is actually being nominated. So audience, Ivan, Steven, Charlie, Midnight Dancer, Steven. Oh, I said that. Logan, Eric, Charlie. Go ahead and make some nominations here. Carmen as well. And who is Centurion 8? Any of you guys in there or girls? Nominations time. If we don't hear any more, I'm going to just go with what Charlie suggested in the chat, because I think some people are kind of like looking at their, yeah, okay, let's go with that, because I've seen his name twice. So let's go with Brian Harmon for the audience. Anybody have any comments about that pick? Spencer, what do you think about Brian Harmon here?
I think it's a fine play. It's a wide open region in general. I had somebody else advancing, but I think that you can make a case between Answer, Simpson, and Harmon. I will say the one that I like the least is probably Bubba. I think a lot of that match play sentiments from him are overblowing a little bit of his ownership here. I know that every course that Bubba goes to, and it's a Bubba course, he seems to play it well. There are lefty advantages that you can find here. I'm a little bit worried for Harmon on day one. I think that's going to be a very big matchup for him against Webb. I think Webb could play spoiler here, and I think Webb could play spoiler without winning the group, which is what makes it even a little bit more volatile with it. But yeah, between those three, it's a very small difference. And I believe Byron has a take on Brian Harmon that he would probably like to give.
Oh yeah, no, Brian's he's peaking. He's in a group that's got zero momentum between all four of those guys. They've just got nothing going on, but he's got the most. He finished T5 at the Valspar. All four of them played in that event, and two of them missed the cut, and Webb messed around in the back of the field all weekend. So I think he's got the momentum coming in. He can put that spaceship into gear and just putt everything in from anywhere. So I love him there, and his irons have been moving nicely in the right direction. He's a pop gun. He can, hit it down the fairway nice and short, hit it close before the next guy goes, and just piss him off that way for 18 holes. It's, there's a lot of beautiful things about Harmon this week.
And let's not forget, he is a bit of a Pete Dye specialist, so you should like this course. Yeah, I like that pick. I think it's a solid pick.
All right. So who are we on now? It is Team Rotoballer for back-to-back picks, correct?
Correct.
Byron, you want to go first again?
Sure. Let me first find my guy. He's someone in the southwest quadrant of the map. Seems as though we're doing some weird terminology there. He's playing fantastic golf at the moment. He had a WD at the Players. I think he might have even made the cut if he had a bit of motivation, but I think he made sure that he was well rested for when he came to this week. He did a solid 2 weeks worth of rest. His irons are trending in the right direction. We know he can putt lights out most of the time. And he is one of the most frustrating people to play match play against. And he won the event last year, and his name is Billy Horschel.
Billy Horschel. Just so you know, your mic like sped you up a little bit and was like crackling a little bit, but we were able to hear you. So Billy Horschel's the pick. Spencer, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think in Horschel's group, if we're just looking specifically at that, he draws Thomas Pieters, Tom Hoagy, Minwoo Lee. I don't have much of a take on Minwoo Lee. I think he's probably one of the weaker 4 seeds that you can find in his group. Pieters has had some sharp money enter him on the market, but I don't necessarily want to go to him. I think Hoagy has the iron play that makes some sense. But the thing I like about Horschel is that he is the only true putter of the mix. The other 3 names, I'm not so sure I trust them standing over a 7-foot putt. I think Horschel is going to be a tough player to compete against for that group. And really, if you can just get out of your region, anything can happen. So I had him losing after he got out of the Sweet 16, but I think certainly, we fill out the left side of the bracket now, which is good. We don't need to touch that anymore. We can move over to the right. Try to make a decision with that. Let me see which way I think we should go here. So, Model, I know that you know a couple of the names that I want to go with. Based off of that, are you fine going into the upper right region for this pick, or would you rather go to the bottom right region?
I would like the bottom right region, mate.
Okay. Is there a name that you would like to pick there?
Of course. How am I sounding? Am I better, or is it still a little weird?
You
No,
sound
it's good.
better.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I unplugged, and I think what's happened now is the guy we're choosing has unplugged himself from the coronavirus and COVID pandemic that we've had, and his game has been trending in a beautiful direction. If you look at his stats over the last while, there's barely any red in any department. He's just crispy clean across the board, and that's perfect for match play. He has a lot of skill sets to rely on. He's got an impeccable short game. And we got to like someone a lot if we're picking Australians, and it's Mark Leishman.
I love that pick. I full disclosure, I have Hatton versus Leishman as my final, so I will sign off on that one happily.
Yes,
Nice.
It's a winner.
I will.
That's what we do at Rotoballer. So
I have to sign off, unfortunately, on that pick as well. I love Mark Leishman this week. I think you're going to get really good ownership. I think JT is maybe a little bit more vulnerable than his ownership says. And at the price you're getting on Leishman, he has a great match play history. I think he's a really good pick here.
We sign off on nothing by Rotoballer, Joel. Stick to the plan.
We got to make them think they're doing well, so it derails their plan.
Very smart.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I checked you. Okay, so we are back to the audience now, and then it's going to be Win Daily with back-to-back picks. Joel, just so you know, while we wait for nominations, I have a couple kind of slightly lower end guys in mind, but I don't have to go first. So if you feel strong about a guy for the next pick, go, and then I'll take the next guy after that. That'll be in that like 7 to 8K range.
So while they're nominating, I guess we're looking in the upper left, right? Because that's the one area we haven't taken anyone. There's 2 guys I'm deciding between up there that I would like to get your opinion on which route you'd rather go.
Okay. Do you want to discuss them now, or
I'll wait till the audience goes before they try and steal from us, because I know these audience guys, they can't be trusted.
Well, it looks like we have a nomination in, but we need a second from somebody. And for the record, we don't have to stick to the upper left. I mean, we can go there, but as long as we're not picking a golfer in an adjacent region to a golfer, or an adjacent group to a golfer that we've already picked, then we're okay, because we're just looking for the 6 into the 8. Okay, so it's Kevin Kisner is the audience pick. So let's mark that down, and then we can kind of calculate how much for their last 2 players, how much they have left. 85.50.
Yeah, they got a good chunk left.
Yeah. So it looks like Logan comes in with we have JT. So is JT in the same group as Kevin Kisner?
Yes.
He is. So you guys do
Yes.
not want Kevin Kisner.
Yeah.
So here's what we'll do. We'll skip their pick now for now. You guys come up with two guys that ideally, so here's one. Let's just go with Sung J M then. Eric has nominated Sung J M. Oh, that's Lights Camera Action, who is of course in our Win Daily Sports Discord, a subscriber. Thanks for piping in, Eric, to save the audience team.
Well, in fairness to the audience, they could also be giving Cantlite since they kind of picked him. It was a little early, but they had 3 people put his name in right before their pick started.
Oh, really? Oh, before. Okay, I gotcha.
Oh, yeah,
that's true. That's true. I didn't even see that. We can put in Cantley there.
You can put in Cantley there.
Yeah.
You'll have to get saved salary in your last 2 picks, but you can do that.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So Joel, you were saying you wanted someone in the upper left region, one of those first 2 groups.
So the 2 guys I'm contemplating are Taylor Gooch, who I think has a really good route getting out. I'm not sure what kind of form Bryson's going to be in after he's taking some time off coming off an injury. I think the rest of this quadrant over here is, relatively weaker. So I think he has a good chance to get out of there at the salary. However, I think the better golfer and another guy who I think can get out of this region is Shane Lowry, who's just been red hot. And we've seen Shane Lowry playing really well. Could have spent a little bit more, but I think Shane Lowry has a higher likelihood of getting to the finals or even winning it. So my thought process is probably Lowry is where I lean, but I'd like to get your opinion on those 2.
I actually lean the other way. I like your Gooch pick. I am a little. I love Shane Lowry. Like I said, Fitzpatrick's striking it better than anybody. I mean, Lowry can raise his hand and call BS on that if he wants to. There's obviously a few golfers, including Justin Thomas, that can call BS on that. I just like Taylor Gooch because of the group he's in, and listen. The problem is we weren't the ones that drafted Max Homa, right? I know I was praising that pick, but he's not on our squad, so. It gives us the license to maybe take out. I think who was it? Was it the audience or was it Team Rotoballer that drafted Max Homa?
We have Homa.
Okay, so that's another reason to take Taylor Gooch. Let's take Taylor Gooch.
Wow.
Hopefully he gets out of his region, and then hopefully Max Homa gets out of his region and takes out. Then we can have a little battle in the Sweet 16. I like the price, and Lowry I'm fine with, but he has to contend with Brooks in level 1, and then. In the second round, potentially John Rahm. I just prefer to avoid that if I can, at least for now. Let me take the 7,700 Gooch.
I like it. I'm in.
So now we have yet another pick. Okay, so this is pick 5 out of 6. What's our average salary, Joel?
So we have about 7,800, 7,700 left. Perfect.
So I have a guy. I don't know. So I have a guy in. I'll give you 2 names, Joel, and these both work from an optimal build standpoint. One is in the lower left-hand corner. It is group 4. It's Keith Mitchell, who I believe is 7,100. So that kind of like gives us some salary relief there. The other guy is on the right-hand side, on the opposite side. He's in group 11, and it's Adam Scott. Who and one of the things I like about Adam Scott is I do think he's probably the best guy in that division right now, in that group right now. I know Keegan's playing really well, but I don't know that I want to lean on him for a putt in a matchup. And Scott's putting hasn't been great as of late, but the overall game, I prefer Scott over Rose and Bradley, and I just don't know where Spieth's game is. So for me, and I'll let you pick between the 2, it's Keith Mitchell in the Cantlay group, which is potentially problematic, and it's Adam Scott in the Jordan Spieth group. Both of them give us the optimal build, thing that we need. It's just that Mitchell gives us a little bit more salary relief and a little bit more flexibility. So you can choose between those 2, Joel.
It's an easy one for me. I love the state of Keith Mitchell's game right now. I think he has been playing really well. I love the price that we're getting on him at 7,100. And I like his draw. I mean, Cantlay obviously is really good, but Cantlay's not playing his best right now. He's not on that tear. He missed a cut recently. He maybe is a little bit vulnerable. Other than Cantlay, I think Keith Mitchell was very much as good as anyone else in that draw. So I think Keith Mitchell is a really good salary saver.
Any thoughts, Byron and Spencer, on Keith Mitchell as we wait for audience nominations?
I can't say I'm the biggest fan of Keith Mitchell because I'm a very big believer in ball striking, just irons, and he doesn't seem like he's constantly bringing that to the party. But I do like him a lot for matchups and match play, because we know that putter can get saucy, and he just pounds it, man. His driver, I was looking at his numbers today. It's just incredible how well he hits that thing. So there's a lot, you can skin a cat in many different ways.
Yeah, I mean, as far as that group is concerned in general, I kind of like the mentality of taking on Patrick Cantlay this week. It just comes down to who do you want to do it with. It's for me, it would probably be Sungjae. I think Sungjae would be my second choice. Mitchell would be the third, but I think any of them have a chance to advance. And the one thing I'll say about Mitchell is he is playing the best golf of probably the four right now. So that's the one thing that he has in his back pocket.
Yeah, fair enough. I like the 7,100 price tag. I mean, we took a couple high end guys with Scotty and Xander. So, Joel, how much? And we have the pick in for the audience, but how much does that leave us for our last pick? Oh, 8,400. Okay, so we can probably go a variety of different ways there. Okay, so the audience their pick is in, and it is none other than maybe the most mispriced guy in this field, maybe arguably, and a guy who's a really good course fit. And just, I mean, the iron play is elite, especially the shorter irons, which you're going to see more of this tournament than you might see in some of the tournaments we've seen the last couple of weeks. And that's going to be Tom Hoagy. So, Joel, I know you're a fan of Hoagy. I know I'm a fan of Hoagy. But Byron, let me ask you. I think Spencer's a fan of Hoagy as well. How do you feel about this pick? And why didn't you take Tom Hoagy? Or is it because you had somebody in that group or that adjacent group?
Yeah, we had Billy O, the
course.
reigning champion. I mean, why would you want anyone other than that? But I had Tom Hoagy for his one and done at Pebble, man. So he just nailed it for me. And he's just come onto the scene and just figured out his game. He's kept his ball striking beautiful. I totally agree with you, C. He's one of the premium ball strikers on the tour right now. Fun to watch. And he's so chilled. He just walks around, he just does his thing, hits it tight, and then misses his fair share of putts, and then just walks off angry and chilled again. It's weird. Yeah, I like him.
All right. So we are on now. Is it the last two picks for Team Rotoballer at this point?
Yeah, we got it.
Team Rotoballer has made a bit of a mess of this.
Yeah.
Well, you've got 8,400 left per player, right?
Which is enough. Yeah,
$8,400 is a lot of money. That is the positive to this. The negative to it is I don't know if there's a combination of two players that either one of us like, because it has to be on the right side of the bracket. It can't be in that Thomas or Spieth group. Not that I would go down to that Spieth group. I like the Thomas group no matter which route you go with that, whether it be Thomas or Kisner or Leishman more. But I guess we can openly talk about these picks and then try to figure out how we can make this work. So for me, my two favorite plays, and we are going to leave so much money on the table if we go this route, would be Connors and Henley. I really like Connors. I think he might be a sleeper at this tournament. Henley's very popular. He is in a difficult group. I don't know how great of a DraftKings play he is for that reason. I mean, I guess we could. Do you have any opinions on Joaquin Niemann?
I've got Cameron Tringali as one of my guys that I'm big on this week. He's going to be obviously he's got zero stuff to bring to the table of late, but if we go him, we can maybe go your boy Marikara up top. I don't know if you want him there, or I don't know if that does the numbers for us properly. But I also don't mind Connors and Henley either. They both obviously the ball strikers I love. So it's just what can they do?
So here's the problem. We can't afford Morikawa and Tringali together. So we're leaving so much money on the table no matter how we play this at this point.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I love that idea. Henley's never lost a match outside of the 18th hole. Yeah. Yeah. And that's beautiful to know. And Connors has got some redemption to get on his hands after going 0-3. And then he's also in a group that's had 32 wins total at Austin. So he's had some serious competition and some serious experience in that group. But I think it's too nice to sneaky play, Spence.
Yeah, I mean, that's my only thing to it is I do think he's the best player, Henley, in his group. I think Connors is very, very sneaky. Now, obviously, like Noren, Casey, and Oosthuizen, as he's like, there's a lot of wins between those two players. I think Connors can make a run at this, though. I mean, I don't know off the top of them. I guess I'll put them in just to see how much money that actually leaves us. Not that it matters. I think leaving a lot of money on the table makes a lot of sense this week. You can get unique by doing that. And maybe that's a way that we can take Russell Henley and go that route. We would have $1,600 left over, which isn't as much as I thought it was going to be. That would probably be my pick unless, I mean, you have something else that you can magically throw out here. The other group that I guess we could talk about, I don't want to mess with the Xander group. I don't necessarily want to mess against Morikawa.
No,
I know
like
you
our
like
guys.
Harmon, so that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, no, and Harmon got taken from us, so I like who we've picked. They two kind of outside the typical match play thoroughbreds that you get. You know, both of them can't putt to save their life when it matters, but you know, we're gonna embrace the chaos. I think that's what this is all about this week.
All right, Homa, Hatton, Horschel, Leishman, Connors, Henley. That sounds like a star-studded six that we've put together. But I will say this. I think that for what we've done of leaving a lot of money on the table, we have given ourselves a unique Henley lineup. That is a positive. We also have given ourselves a unique Max Homa lineup, which those are going to be, at first glance, the two guys that are the most popular for us. And we have 4 players that are going to be a little under-owned, I think. So I wish we could have gotten maybe to Hovland or Morikawa. That might have made a little bit more sense, but let's roll with it. I think it's the best we have at this point.
Yeah, I totally agree. Your Harmon pick nuked our entire plan, though, Joel. So thank you for that.
All right, so we are back to the audience before Win Daily makes their last pick, right?
Yes.
All right, so audience. So how much money does the audience have left? Was it 7,700?
It is 7,700.
All right. So audience, you have nominations coming in. Who do we have? 7,700. And Joel, while they are submitting those nominations, I don't know who you have on the top of your mind. I'll let you go first, but just so you know, I have 2 guys I'm considering that still fit within the quote optimal build and fit within the price range. I guess we have 8,400 left. I have a couple guys in mind.
I also
you do as well,
guys, and they're probably the same 2 guys.
that would be so amazing if they are. And by the way,
we already talked about.
Okay, well, okay. Oh, they can't get them anyway. Okay, yeah, one of them is that guy, of course, and then there's
the
another
other one is Sergio Garcia.
That's right. Those are my 2 as well. So we can go ahead and table talk since these guys can't get him. Okay, so it looks like Sepp Straka is the guy, right?
Yep, Sepp Straka.
And he's certainly within the price parameters at 7,000, so they leave 700 on the table, which is perfectly fine. Plenty of nominations there. Thank you, Edward, Charlie, Eric. Logan recommended Connors there. Thank you guys for those nominations. Okay, so Joel, between Sergio and let me ask you, what's the analysis here between those two? Like, how do you want to figure this one out?
So the way I look at it, and go back to the bracket here, I think Sergio, I actually think he has a nice draw. You know, obviously Colin Morikawa is one of the best golfers in the world, but he hasn't been playing his best form. After Morikawa, that's a pretty open group there. I think the group below that is a group that's beautiful. So I think that's a good path for Sergio.
Agreed.
I guess the one way I lean toward Lowry is because with Sergio, he runs into Xander, and we have a lot invested in Xander. Right? We need Xander to get out of there. And with Lowry, you know, if Lowry runs into Gooch, you know, it kind of lets us hedge in that group where we have 2 guys who can compete. And granted, Sergio.
Yeah, but Sergio can compete with Xander though. And you know what I'm saying? Either way, it's an optimal build where one of 2 relatively strong guys gets to the final 4 if it works out for us. I agree with you. I think obviously Morikawa is scary, but he's not in the best form. And if Sergio gets to the second round, it's Answer, Simpson, Harmon, or Watson. I mean, I'm not saying any of those guys are bad, but Sergio can beat any of those guys. You know, I mean, I think I'd love to see what the matchup is, Sergio versus every single one of those guys, but I kind of think he'd be the favorite in all 4 of them, especially with his play here and with the fact that he's from this area. So I think it's Sergio because I think Adam Scott's path is a little bit more troublesome, especially when you consider his second round matchup is going to be either Rotoballer's guy, Mark Leishman, or, Justin Thomas. I mean, I don't think Kisner's advancing personally, but that's a much tougher path for Adam Scott than it is for Sergio. So let's, Joel, you want to lock up Sergio?
Let's go with Sergio.
Let's go Sergio. All right. So these are the teams. We're going to tweet these teams out. And by the way, I'm going to give some Punta first round leaders in a second. But again, this tournament starts Wednesday. So you guys get these teams in, but we got to tweet these teams out and we got to see who the fans like. I mean, Joel, it's obviously the Win Daily guys that everybody likes, right?
Well, I think you guys, the audience, did a good job drafting the second best team. I don't think Roto ever had a chance, but it's the Win Daily show. Clearly, we drafted the best team. It's really not even close. But you guys tell us what you think. Drop in who you think is the best team. Let us know which team you like to win it all this week. I think we got some interesting squads here. We did draft optimally, which is key and it is must do if you're going to put lineups in. Make sure you put a lot of thought into how you're building your roster construction so that you give yourself a chance to make some money this week. I had fun drafting. Before we wrap up the draft, we take this off the screen. Don't forget, hit the like button, give us a follow. Goes a long way. Please go ahead and do that. And we're going to give you guys one more treat before we wrap up tonight. Unfortunately, Sia can't continue his streak this week because there's no such thing as first leader, but we are going to get some outrights. And we're going to see who's going to win this tournament. We're going to have some fun with that. So we're going to head right to the outright market. Spence, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so one of the ways I'm going to play this tournament is, and I said this on the Better Golf podcast, and it's one of the things I like doing in this tournament. If you roll over bet the players that you like, so like for a favorite of the group, it might just be betting them to win their group. And then taking all that money that you win and putting it on like for example, instead of making the outright ticket on a Tyrrell Hatton at 28-1, you might be able to run up a higher number if you bet him to win the group and then bet him in that first match against whoever he plays in the Cantlay group. You put all of that money, you bet him again. So it's just, you just keep rolling it over and over again. It gives you ways to cash out too. Like if you reach a point where you say, okay, I don't want to have this amount of money, keep rolling it over with it. You can remove some of that money from the table, pocket it with it. That's how I like playing this tournament. I won 15 units last year doing it on Billy Horschel. So you can really run up some big numbers, and I wouldn't have bet to win more than 8 units on Horschel. So you can kind of see where these outright numbers might be a little skewed in one direction with it when you go that route. Now, the alternative is be aware that if the draw opens up for one of the favorites, that might not be the best path. Like usually you get higher numbers. I'll give you my final four, and these are the 4 guys, or the final 4 on my bracket. And these are the 4 guys that I'm going to be trying to either roll over bet or bet them pre-event. And it is Brooks Koepka, Tyrrell Hatton, Corey Connors, and Mark Leishman.
I like it.
All right.
I like it. That's a good pick. Model. Who do you like in the outright market?
So I've gone engage 8 mode. I'm blitzing this field. It's going balls to the wall. We're going 8 guys, 2 guys from each bracket. Perfect scenario, I can have all 8 in the Elite 8. I've also bet every single one of these guys to escape their group. I just went simple, went easy, and it's Alex Noren, Max Homa, Kevin Kisner, Brian Harmon, Seamus Power, Ian Poulter, Cameron Young, and Cameron Tringali. It's a wild assortment of players. It's just a zombie rush of potential that I'm kind of just hoping to sneak some guys through the cracks. That's pretty much my philosophy here. A lot of these guys have good match play history too.
I like it. Those are some solid picks. A lot of those guys I'm aligned with as well.
Really fast, Joel, just because I saw the comment come up. Brooks Koepka was the guy I was going to mention. So that quadrant of those, if you want to say group 1, 16, 9, and 8, I think Homa and DJ are very close. I think that this Shambo group is weak in general. I mean, maybe Gooch is the one that can make the run out of there. If you believe, which I kind of do, that Rahm ends up faltering, this can open up very quickly. And if DJ doesn't come out of it, and let's just say it's Homa, which Homa would be a tough matchup himself, I think this opens up for Koepka in a way. So I kind of like taking some chances up in that group. I think Homa's one way to do it, which is the way Byron did it. Koepka's the way I did it. But I kind of like trying to take on Rahm and hope that he just doesn't make putts for his 3 rounds and he doesn't advance.
Or that he can't chip, which he hasn't been able
That
to do
too.
in a few months.
Yeah.
Honestly, his biggest competition might be Shane Lowry in the opening group. Whoever emerges from that group, I think, is probably going to be in pretty good shape, just from a probability standpoint, to get really far. So that is so. Just to go back, Edward was asking who Spencer was talking about in the beginning of the show when we were doing the draft. Spencer was going to talk about somebody, but he reserved talking about him because I guess he didn't want to influence some of the future picks, which is
and the other thing with that too, it's like, just remove Rom from the equation for a second and say he doesn't advance. So he's either going to play, if assuming Koepka can get through, he either plays Reed, Young, or Munoz. That's a matchup he's going to be a heavy favorite in. And if DJ doesn't get through the group, he's going to be a favorite against anybody there, including DeChambeau. Like DeChambeau, even if he advances, I don't know if you necessarily can say that he earned that path. Like, Gooch is the one person that is probably the most likely one to beat him, but you could get something wonky coming out from there. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be Richard Bland, but it opens up very quickly if a Mackenzie Hughes sneaks through a group that you weren't expecting, and all of a sudden Koepka's path could become Cameron Young, Mackenzie Hughes, and all of a sudden he's in the Final Four with the easiest path. And I think in general, one of the easier groups to begin with. Lowry has a little bit of threat to him, but don't love Varner. EVR is okay at this, but that's just my mindset with Koepka, that I think that the path for him might be as easy as the path is for Xander, but nobody seems to be thinking that way, and everybody's going to Xander and doesn't want to go to Koepka.
Well, and it's because Xander has Finau, Herbert, and Kanai in his initial
It's easier.
group. I mean, it's just when you see Shane Lowry as well as he's hitting it, you're right. But to your point, Spencer, Xander's number, at some places, I think it was 28-1. It's really been bet down for that exact reason, Spencer, because the perception is Xander has the easier path. Now, the question from an outright perspective is, well, what does it matter if his easier path really is only in the first round? If you can make the argument that Brooks' easier path is after the first round, because maybe that matters more from an outright perspective. With that said, I'm going to give just 3 outrights for this tournament. And again, I'll have my standard 5 picks for the Corrales Punta Cana first round leader right after this segment. But I would have said Xander, but his number's been bet down. I think if you can get him at 28-1, that's fine. I like that. But I just saw it on DraftKings at 20-1. Like, there's no way I would touch that number. Brooks at 30-1, though, is appealing to me. Maybe I got the bad number there. Maybe he opened a little bit better. I didn't look. But I like Brooks Koepka still at 30-1. I like Fitzmagic, Matt Fitzpatrick, Match Fitzpatrick at 35-1, and Shane Lowry at 40-1. So obviously I'm taking Brooks and Lowry. So I'm basically, one of my 3 outrights, or 4 if you include Xander, is going to be whoever emerges from that first group, who I fully expect to be Brooks or Shane Lowry.
Yeah, I just to mention the Fitzpatrick play that you brought up, I like him also this week. I think if he can get through his group now, beating Scotty Scheffler is not going to be easy. And even when we look at Fleetwood and Poulter, it's not going to be simple that way either. Like, this may be a spot where rollover betting might even make more sense with it. But he can beat Horschel. If Hatton's not the name that gets there, I think that he sets up pretty well with most of those guys beneath there. I think him and Berger would be a tough matchup too. But Fitzpatrick could get hot and could run the win this tournament. I think he's one of the trendy but long shots still, like 35-50-1 players that I don't think enough people are on this week for the upside that he actually possesses in this tournament. Because like, the thing I keep hearing about Fitzpatrick is that he doesn't make enough birdies. And sure, there's some truth to be said about that, but you could say the same thing about Kevin Kisner. You could say the same thing about Alex Noren during those runs that he's made. Give me a guy who's a good putter, and if the irons are a little bit better than they usually are, they could steamroll through some of these brackets.
Yeah, and his ball striking has been elite. And by the way, he's kind of got like an arrogance about him now, like a good arrogance about him. I don't know if you guys caught what he said after this last tournament, but he was like, hey, if I was putting well, I would have won this by 2 or 3 strokes. And for the record, I don't think he's just being brash. I think he actually believes that. And that's what you need in match play. So listen, here's the thing. From a DFS standpoint, I do want to point this out. I think it's interesting to fade this group altogether because it is such a tough group. I mean, if you want to add Fleetwood and Poulter in there, those guys are going to be tough in match play, and you have Fitzpatrick and Scheffler. So as great a favorite as Scheffler is, I think just from a game theory standpoint, in DFS, fading that group altogether and taking a guy like Billy Horschel to go to the Final Four, or Daniel Berger, who I understand doesn't have the best match play record. I'm not really concerned about that, by the way. I think one of those two guys could be really interesting from a DFS standpoint, because if you take Scotty, that's great. I love the history. I love that it's his home course. I love that he went to school here. I love that he's ball striking. I love that we know he can win. But Fitzpatrick, Fleetwood, and Poulter in that group, if he doesn't emerge, there goes your winning ticket from a DFS standpoint. So look at some of those other guys in that region, because those guys are going to kind of kill themselves a little bit just playing each other.
The same thing can kind of be said about Hattenberger, Siwoo, and Bezadenhout, but it's the same exact thought process that I had for
Spencer. I'm not gonna let you do that with Bezadenhout. No offense, Byron, but listen, this guy's getting talked about like he's some like elite guy. He's not.
No, and that's fair. I think he's like, of the options, I think Hatton and Berger are by far and away the two. I mean, I have Hatton winning the tournament, so like I'm not that worried about Bezadenhout, but I just think as a fourth choice, if we're comparing him, like if we start running through these names, he's better than Richard Bland. He's better than Minwoo Lee. I think he's better than Sepp Straka. You could argue with some of these other names on it, I guess. Like, I guess I'd rather have Alex Noren to him. I'd probably rather have him than Bubba Watson, but it's just him being the fourth option. Like, he's at least in the middle pack of the fourth option. And I think Siwoo Kim on a Pete Dye course is always dangerous. So I just think that group in general, mostly when you have two guys in the top 6 in Hatton and Berger, that already makes it difficult. I think Siwoo is a dangerous 3 seed. I do think Bezadenhout is the least likely person to advance from there. But yeah, I mean, I took Hatton for kind of all the reasons that you mentioned with it.
You know what I just heard, guys? What I just heard is that Keith Mitchell's winning this entire thing. That's basically what Spencer just said.
You're giving me a great transition for my outrights, because Pete Dye specialist Siwoo Kim happens to be one of my outrights. I like him at 80-1. I think, we've seen Siwoo put together a weekend where he really strikes it. And of course, he's been striking the ball better. And, Siwoo's the type that, when he starts playing well, he kind of does it in bunches. And the 80-1 number, weird things happen in match play. So I like Siwoo. I also like at 90-1, Kevin Na, who just had a kid. So it's a little bit narrative lane. He's coming off having a child, coming back, getting redemption at DJ from last year from the little scuttle they had about picking up his ball. So I think Kevin Na can come out at 90-1 and compete. And my more realistic, I think the number is low. Outright, it's Colin Morikawa. At 20-1, this is a guy who's normally the favorite or top 2. We got him now somewhere near 5 or 6 in this range. He was a little bit cold last 2 weeks, but we've seen Colin Morikawa gets hot with his irons. He can kind of run away with the weekend.
Yeah, I like the Morikawa play from a game theory perspective on DraftKings also. I think when you look at who he's matched up against, like specifically in his group, Kokrak has regressed with his putter, mostly from that 5 to 15 foot range. I don't know if that's because he lost his greens reading book. So now all of a sudden, he doesn't have that built-in advantage that he had. But you kind of have 3 other guys there where he's the best ball striker of the group. And you have 3 players that, are shaky with their putter at best. And then depending on what happens below them, if a guy like Abraham Answer is able to get through that group, Morikawa could face an easier matchup with him, because Answer's just a worse version of what he does, kind of. So, all of a sudden he's in the Elite 8 there. I have him against Connors on my bracket. I had Connors beating him, but very easily Morikawa could get through that. And then all of a sudden he makes a run into the Final Four in the finals, and you have a live ticket.
I love it. Well, there it is. That's a wrap for the match, but we're not done yet. See ya, Oju first round leaders. All right. You can't just go on a streak winning every single tournament and not give one out the next week. So see ya. Enlighten us.
So for the sake of accounting, and I did tweet this out, but I have a slight correction to my benefit. So I've hit 6 out of the last 12 tournaments. I put that out on Twitter when I hit the last one. In other words, basically since the beginning of the year. That's basically where I was counting from, the beginning of the year, the beginning of this calendar year. But the reality is I've hit 6 out of the last 11 because I didn't hit in that first tournament. So I could have cheated and put 6 out of 11, but I just wanted to be like, all right, let's just start from the calendar year. I've hit 50% of the first round leaders, only picking 5 per tournament. So I didn't want to come empty-handed here. So I did look into Punta Cana, and I also looked at weather splits. I wanted to know if Thursday had an advantage over Friday. The reality is it doesn't matter for the purposes of this show, because last I checked before this show, tee times weren't out. The good news is it looks like the wind is somewhere between like 12 and 18 miles per hour, sustained the entire morning and afternoon. So there shouldn't be too much of an advantage other than just the typical softer conditions that you might get in the morning. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. If something changes, maybe I'll update these picks. But listen, like Joel said at the beginning of the show, this is a good DFS tournament to play. It's a good tournament to maybe bet some outright, some pretty decent guys at longer odds that actually have win potential because of this type of field. It reminds me of like 6 years ago, Tony Finau was in the alternate event from the Masters, and I bet him 50-1 at the Puerto Rico Open. And the funny part about that story is, and by the way, I only bet him, that was when I was starting to get into golf betting. I only bet him because it was one of the few names I recognized in the alternate event. I'm like, I know he's good. Why is he 50-1? So I bet him. But here's the funny part. I bet him twice by accident, and I didn't realize it until after. So I had two accounts going, and two completely different outfits. And I bet like $15 on both of them. And so when I looked at my one account, I was like, oh, sweet. I want a good amount of money. And then days later, I open up the next account and I realized I had a Tony Finau bet on that one too. So anyway, okay, so let me just get right to it. We've already spent 70 minutes of your time. Okay, first round leaders at the Corrales Punta Cana. Let's start with Adam Svensson at 45-1. Pretty good odds in this field. Adam Svensson could absolutely win this tournament too. Let's go with Bryce Garnett at 50-1, who, by the way, has pretty good course history here and has been striking the ball really well. He was almost the breaking news #1 candidate, but he's not. I'm going like way off the radar for that one. Aaron Rai at 50-1. I don't believe he has experience on this course. Not that that's critical, but for first rounds, I typically like to have some experience on the course. I just think Aaron Rai is really coming on. He makes cuts and he has some very scoreable rounds. So at 50-1 in this field, I liked it. Hayden Buckley, that's kind of a new kid on the block that I'm starting to like, or I've liked for a while now. He's been up and down. I just like his game in general. He's 65-1. So I'll give you one more guy, but let me just go. Adam Svensson, 45-1, Bryce Garnett, 50-1, Aaron Rai, 50-1, Hayden Buckley, 65-1. Here's the breaking news. Here is the random name that most of us, including maybe myself, don't even know how to pronounce. He's a guy that like he's kind of popping to me, especially in this field. I do believe he has good course experience, and he's 65-1. He's going to be your first round leader come Thursday evening when the first round concludes in Punta Cana, the Dominican Republic. It's none other than Chase Seifert. Yeah, Chase Seifert. It was going to be Bryce Garnett, but it's Chase Seifert at 65-1. So pepper the other four guys, Svensson, Garnett, Aaron Rai, Hayden Buckley. But it turns out it's going to be Chase Seifert that's your first round leader come Thursday night in Punta Cana. So 65-1, pretty good odds. Take it to the bank.
So we're chasing that first round leader play with Seifert. I love it. That is
This is for 3 in a row, by the way. This is for the hat trick, the first round leader hat trick. Just saying.
It's
insane.
I just assume it's for like 30 in a row at this point.
Silly.
That's not even. It doesn't really. It's really more because you got 2 last week, so you didn't even just get 1. Multiple.
Yeah, I did.
So that's just a lock. I mean, I recommend you put as much money as you can possibly get your hands on that bet. Make sure you really capitalize on it. But that's a wrap for tonight. Special thank you to Byron for coming on, drafting with us. I apologize for how badly we're going to beat you guys down in this draft, but I really appreciated you coming on and giving your insights tonight.
Love you too, Joel.
I think that's it. See, anything else?
Well, first of all, we're going to tweet out the audience team, the Rotoballer team, and of course the Win Daily team. We want as much interaction as possible. So everybody that's still listening, it looks like a good number of you, please retweet it, make comments. Which team do you like? Which team, which player got left out that you definitely are going to want to play in DFS or bet on in DFS? Let's get some retweets, some action going, because this is a great show. With the feedback we're getting is like truly tremendous. I mean, this was sort of Joel's idea. Joel and Spencer sort of cultivated it. I'm just along for the ride. They're the idea guys. And at the end of the day, this is a really good idea. We love the guests that we have on. Byron, we've had plenty. We're going to have plenty more. But we'd like it to get the attention it deserves. And that's where you guys come in. So we like you hitting the like button every week, Tuesday at 8 o'clock, if not sooner. and retweeting or commenting or liking whatever you're comfortable with. That's what we'd like you to do. And the only other thing is